Welcome to Bass Backwards, home of real facts, never fiction. To complete this mission, all you gotta do is listen. Now let's ride. There's been a lot of speculation regarding Gunna's recent plea deal, and if he did in fact snitch. People certainly formulate their own opinions, but opinions are subjective and not always factual. On top of that, we live in a world full of selective politicking where everyone isn't held accountable for the same actions. In this video, we'll be looking at the facts and what's in black and white so that there is no confusion. On December 14th, 2022, one day before a major court hearing for YSL, the world received news that Gunna had entered a guilty plea, seemingly out of nowhere.
With YSL around 2016. Is that true as it pertains to you, Mr. Kitchens?
Yes, ma'am.
YSL is a music label and a gang, and you have personal knowledge that members or associates of YSL have committed crimes in furtherance of the gang.
Yes, ma'am.
You were present when law enforcement officers stopped a vehicle in which you were present along with Jeffrey Williams, wherein hydrocodone, methamphetamines, and a firearm were recovered. These items did not belong to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you acknowledge the following statement? I recognize, accept, and deeply regret that my talent and music indirectly furthered YSL the gang to the detriment of my community. YSL as a gang must end. Is that your statement or acknowledgement?
Yes.
This small clip from Gunna's plea hearing contains a lot of information simply by reading between the lines. You hear the DA state, YSL is a music label and a gang, and you have personal knowledge that members or associates of YSL have committed crimes in furtherance of the gang, to which Gunna replies, yes ma'am. Surely you wouldn't say anything else, right? I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately, during the plea, Gunna also proclaims and testifies to the fact that the drugs and weapons found in the car were not his when he was pulled over with Young Thug in 2017. Interesting. So if they didn't belong to Gunna, who could they possibly belong to since Young Thug was the only other person in the car? Could he not have said, I don't know who they belong to, and avoid dry snitching on Young Thug? He probably couldn't have due to his plea deal, but couldn't have and shouldn't have are vastly different statements. Again, do you think this was a random question or statement by the prosecution? Of course it wasn't. This was to add another proverbial nail in the coffin for YSL and Young Thug. Sergio is making an awful lot of statements for someone who proclaimed they had made no statements. At least he didn't make any more. Okay, well maybe just one more statement. The DA finally states YSL as a gang must end, and Gunna willingly agrees and says yes. One very impactful quote comes to mind when thinking about the statement Sergio just made. Slime snitched and told the whole story, he a narrator. Courtesy of Mr. Albert Walker, circa 2022. On the heels of this guilty plea, Gunna released a press statement via social media. This press statement was an attempt at damage control to combat what the world just witnessed before their very eyes, live and in HD. Now, let's take a look at Gunna's press statement and see what exactly he has to say. When I became affiliated with YSL in 2016, I did not consider it a gang. More like a group of people from Metro Atlanta who had common interests and artistic aspirations. My focus of YSL was entertainment, rap artists who wrote and performed music that exaggerated and glorified urban life in the black community. While I have agreed to always be truthful, I want to make it perfectly clear that I have not made any statements, have not been interviewed, have not cooperated, have not agreed to testify or be a witness for or against any party in the case, and have absolutely no intention of being involved in the trial process in any way. I have chosen to end my own RICO case with an Alfred plea and end my personal ordeal by publicly acknowledging my association with YSL. An Alfred plea in my case is the entry of a guilty plea to the one charge against me, which is in my best interest, while at the same time maintaining my innocence toward the same charge. I love and cherish my association with YSL music and always will. I look at this as an opportunity to give back to my community and educate young men and women that gangs and violence only lead to destruction. Now, let's take a deep dive and dissect this press statement. When I became affiliated with YSL in 2016, I did not consider it as a gang. So in 2016, he did not consider it as a gang, but now in 2022, he does consider it a gang. Seems pretty convenient. While I have agreed to always be truthful. Now let's take a look at this entire paragraph. The first part of this sentence is in present tense. I have agreed to always be truthful. The rest of this paragraph is in past tense. Not made any statements, not been interviewed, etc., etc. You can go ahead and add the word yet to the end of each of these statements. Just because you haven't made any statements yet doesn't mean that you're not going to in the future. Side note, Gunna did make a statement when he stated the drugs and guns in the car were not his when he was pulled over with Young Thug in 2017. Yet another statement, YSL is a music label and a gang. Have yet another statement, YSL as a gang must come to an end. There's an awful lot of statements for somebody that has not made any statements. Now let's take a look at the very end of that sentence. And have absolutely no intention of being involved in the trial process in any way. Intentions are not absolute. Just because someone intends on doing something doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. I intended to mow my grass today, but it rained, so my intentions did not come to fruition. Maybe Gunna doesn't intend to be involved in the trial, but his intentions don't mean anything because it's all up to the prosecution. Now, one of the biggest hurdles for Young Thug and his co-defendants is and was the actual function of YSL. Is YSL a gang or a record label? This has been a key point for the defense, and even during the bond hearings, the defense called multiple witnesses to attest to the fact that YSL is a record label. Do you really think it was random or accidental that the prosecution specifically had Gunna, as well as DK, Duke, and Slime Life Shouty, state that YSL is a gang? Of course not. This is going to be a major piece of evidence in the upcoming trial, having high-ranking members admit and plead to the fact that YSL is a gang. This is a major blow to YSL and its defense, because it negates everything they have fought for as far as classifying YSL as a record label and not a gang, courtesy of Gunna. Now this should just about cover everything in relation to Gunna's plea, right? Wrong. Let's dive further and take a look at the special conditions of Gunna's plea. The only major key to these special conditions is Special Condition A, which reads, if called by any party in this case, you will testify truthfully, but reserve your right to assert your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. I want everyone to read the first 8 words of this statement. If called by any party in this case. Well, what does that mean? This means that Gunna can be called by anyone involved in this case, not just a particular prosecutor. So let's say a current co-defendant turns state witness and provides testimony. Gunna could be called in to corroborate that testimony being used against YSL and Young Thug. This special condition also applies to the plea bargains for DK, Duke, and Slime Life Shouty. But we'll save that for another video. Let's continue to unpack this special condition. The next part of Special Condition A says, you will testify truthfully. But Gunna, I thought your press statement said that you had no intention of being involved in the trial process in any way. Right. Looks like a direct contradiction to me, but let's continue. We have one last part of Special Condition A to decipher. But reserve your right to assert your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. So what does that even mean? The Fifth Amendment protects individuals from being forced to incriminate themselves. Key word, themselves. This part of Special Condition A is great for Gunna. This part of the condition means that yes, he can certainly plead the fifth to avoid incriminating himself, but he has no way around incriminating everyone else. Remember, this is part of his plea, so it's non-negotiable at this point. Since these are actual conditions of his plea, not a bond, he must abide by these conditions or risk the state of Georgia reinstating his 4-year suspended sentence, and he would have to serve the remainder of those 4 years in a Georgia state prison. Gunna was nearly at the finish line, with the YSL trial set to begin as early as January of 2023. He folded on Young Thug and YSL with a little more than 1 month left until the trial begins. Gunna had been in custody for 7 months. Does anyone actually feel that he would do anything to risk having to serve 4 years in state prison after he couldn't last in county jail for 8 months or so? Unfortunately, I think everyone listening knows the answer to that. At this point, the only P Gunna is pushing is paperwork, pleas, prosecution, and perpetration. One of the saddest parts of this to me is what Young Thug did for Gunna. Young Thug showed and gave Gunna the world, gave him billions of dollars worth of game, and gave him true loyalty. King Troop is rolling in his grave right now thinking about these actions and would never condone what Gunna did. And remember, it's not just Young Thug suffering from this. Gunna may have just sealed the fate of over 20 other people that he once called brother. Had Gunna stayed down just another month or so and made it to trial, the worst he could have gotten was the same 5 years that he pled out to, and without signing YSL's death warrant and costing them decades of their freedom. Just another month or so, and Gunna would have came home a hero. His career would have blasted off even further into orbit, and he would have made even more money because of this, on top of having the respect and admiration of his friends and peers. More importantly, he would have given YSL a fighting chance at this trial rather than sealing their fate, and I would have had a much better time creating that video versus this one. A big shout out to everybody that tuned in for this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can force this content into the YouTube algorithm. Be on the lookout for more content in the near future. Just always remember to bring your swimwear, because we're going to continue to dive right up in there. Peace.